You're now tuned in to the Millionaire by Morning podcast, the only podcast designed to make our listeners millionaires through mindset, motivation, mastery, meditation, and manifestation. And now your host, Rashad Thurlkill.
Entrepreneurs, business leaders, CEOs, general managers, they all face one of the greatest and most vexing challenges, which is how to grow the business faster and outpace their competition. Despite many attempts, there has not been a consistent methodology on which they can rely to generate real and sustainable revenue growth. That's why they continue to struggle with the deceptively simple yet fundamental question: what do I do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow my business? Dr. Philip Bouissou has developed a new methodology to cut the Gordian growth knot and deliver sustained growth. It's a universal, data-driven, and prescriptive approach to accelerate any business, regardless of its size, location, or type of products and services it sells. It is based on the profound insight that maximum growth can only be achieved when the business and its target market are perfectly aligned, just like fine gears between the two plates of a mechanical watch. Dr. Bouissou will tell us about this new approach, why it matters to you, and we'll talk about his bestseller book, Aligning the Dots, and his television series, The Alignment Zone, that was recently launched and that delivers a clear answer to the Monday morning question. Why is Philip Bouissou qualified to give these answers? Well, a little bit about his background. Philippe was the founder and CEO of G2i, a Unix software company. He managed the Milestone Group for half a decade. He also founded and ran Apple's worldwide internet commerce group, where he ran the online Apple store and grew his revenue from zero to 350 million under Steve Jobs. Today, it generates over $25 billion for Apple. Philip was a general partner in 2 venture capital firms and has served on 21 board of directors, including 3 today. During his management consulting career, Philip led over 210 management consulting projects. Philip is currently managing Blue Dots Partners, a firm focused on helping companies with over 10 million in revenue grow faster using a unique, universal, data-driven, and prescriptive methodology. Philip graduated in Paris and holds a BS in mathematics, a MS in physics, and a PhD in nonlinear physics and chaos theory. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Philip Bouissou, bestseller author of Aligning the Dots, host of the Alignment Zone television series, speaker, growth expert, venture capitalist, CEO, entrepreneur, board member. Philip Bouissou has been in Silicon Valley for 31 years, founding, growing, and running a number of businesses and learning a few lessons along the way. Welcome to the show, Dr. Philip Bouissou.
Thank you, Rashad. It is a pleasure being with you this morning.
Thanks a lot, man. I see that you are well accomplished, and that's why I wanted to reach out to you and conduct this interview. Maybe you can give some insight to my listeners. The Aligning the Dots book, it seems to be a type of blueprint. So I would like to go a little bit into the book. What gave you the motivation to create this particular creative work?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I have been in Silicon Valley for 31 years, as you mentioned, and growing a business has been, to me, you know, the most frustrating and difficult challenge that I've seen as an entrepreneur myself, as a CEO myself, as a business leader, but also I've seen it through, you know, hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs that I've met through my VC experience. And the top line revenue is critical. It's a matter of survival. I mean, I met with Bracken Darrell a couple of years ago. He's the CEO of Logitech. And Bracken told me, he said, look, there is only growth or death. And he's absolutely right. If your business is not growing faster than your market, that means that your competition is, and they are taking away market share from you. And you're basically on a path to become irrelevant. They're gonna just own the market and you're not gonna be a player. And so, the growth is critical to survive, but it's also, in my opinion, the only way to generate real and sustainable value. If you want to create value for your shareholders or for your partners in a business, you have to grow that business. If you are declining, then nobody is going to say, it's going to reward you for that. So I wanted, and I've been struggling with this challenge for many, many years about what do I do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow the business better? And it's a relatively simple question. And I'm thinking of this question like, what do I do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to be a good parent? Everybody wants to be a good parent. There's thousands of books about parenting, but there is no way to do it. There is no single way. You cannot go to a class and become a quote unquote good parent. So, and the reason is because every child is different, and in the same way in business. Well, I don't think you should talk about it, but I think they should read it. And the reason is because it brings a new way to solve that problem. And I'm going to tell you what it is at a high level. The big insight I had back in 2014 was that business can only grow as much as possible within a target. Again, the growth is always relative to the market, right? The market is growing at a certain pace, and you have to compare your growth rate to that market growth rate. And what happens is if you want to grow as much as you can within your target market, you have to perfectly align your business with that target market. So the lack of growth is fundamentally a problem of misalignment. And as you said, it's like gears in a mechanical watch. If you misalign them, yeah, the watch may be working for a while, but then it will start to slow down and eventually stop ticking. It's the same with the business. So you understand that it's all about alignment for universal axis of alignment between any business and its target market. And the stunning fact, the stunning discovery I made is that those universal axis of alignment are truly universal. They apply to any business. So I can take a cafe on the left bank of Paris, I can take Tesla, I can take American Airlines, I can take your own business, Rashad, and I can take Blue Dot Partners, the business I'm running. They apply exactly the same way. And let me describe very quickly what they are. The first one is that the pain of the customer and the claim that the business makes to address that pain have to be aligned. Okay. So if you come to me and you have a headache, Rashad, and I said, well, here is a stomach pill, a stomachache pill, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, my head is hurting. That's my pain. Your claim, which is to make my stomach free, I don't really care because it's not my stomach. So you will never buy my pill. The second axis is the way the claim is expressed, which is the messaging and the positioning. And the way that claim is understood have to be aligned. So let's assume I have a pill for your headache. It costs 99 cents. It will cure your headache in 10 minutes. But I describe it to you in Korean, and I'm assuming you don't speak Korean. You will look at me and you can say, what the heck is this guy talking about? And there is no way you're going to buy the pill because you don't understand what I mean. Even the pill for your headache. That's the second axis. The third one is the way customers want to buy the product or acquire the product or the service, and the way the business sells that product in the marketplace have to be aligned. So if I said, Rashad, I'm here in Palo Alto in the Bay Area, you want my pill, you can get it, but you have to fly here. You're going to say, wait a minute, I'm in Fort Worth in Texas. Why can't I walk to the next pharmacy and buy it over there? That's the third axis of alignment. And then the fourth one is my favorite one. I actually stole it out of the Apple playbook. As you say, I worked directly for Steve Jobs for about a year. And in fact, if you ever wonder how I lost my hair, now you know the answer. But there are a few lessons I learned from Steve. And one of them, which interestingly enough, I learned after I left Apple, I came to the realization that there is one unique business on this entire planet. There is not more than one. We are all in the exact same business, whether you're a dentist, whether you're selling advertising on Google, whether you're selling cars, it's the same business. And that unique business is the manufacturing and delivery of delight. And let me say that again, because this is really profound. The unique business there is on this planet, we're all in the same business, which is we have to manufacture and we have to deliver delight. Now, when you buy a product, you have a certain delight expectation in your head before you use and consume that product. As you go through that consumption cycle with that product, that expectation has to be met. There has to be an alignment between what you expect and what's delivered to you. And that's the fourth axis. So again, the four axes of alignment, the four universal axes of alignment are that the pain of the customer and the claim the business makes have to be aligned. The messaging, which is the expression of the claim, and the way it's understood have to be aligned. The way customers want to buy and to purchase and the way the business sells have to be aligned. And then finally, the expected delight of the customer and what the business delivers to that customer have to be aligned. And if you perfectly align your business along those four axes, go as much as you can within your target market. And that's really all what the book is about. And there's 20 case studies that really illustrate every one and examples and measurements of those axes.
Okay.
That's what the book is about.
That's what the book is about. That's excellent, because it basically has pillars that people can actually put into action and do marketing research based on it.
Yes.
So definitely, I'm glad it's on this podcast. That way you can rewind it as much as possible and listen to it, to the listeners out there. So alignment is key. That's awesome. So that's the secret sauce. Okay. So with the alignment, and we're discussing growth. What was the reasoning, or why did you choose to focus on growth specifically?
As I said earlier, if you don't grow, you're dead, you're dying. And if you want to create value, which I assume is what most business people want to do with their own business, you have to grow. That's the only way. And in fact, if you look at the top companies, you can take any market segment, any market. So for example, you can take the crane industry where people are selling cranes for construction. The top 3 players of any market are tremendously rewarded from a share value perspective. In other words, their share of value as publicly traded companies is much higher than their market share. So they may have a combined market share of 30%, but they may take 80% of the value of the equity value of their market value. And so now, if you want to be one of those top 3, it means you have to grow faster than the 97 companies below you. You have to beat all those companies. That's the only way. You cannot get into that position if you're not growing faster. So that's an extreme example where in a given industry, whatever the industry is, the top 3 players are extremely rewarded from a value perspective. And the only way they can get there is by outpacing everybody else. And that's why growth is so critical. And that's true for a restaurant as well. If you're a restaurant and you're not growing as fast as your restaurant next door, then that restaurant is taking market share to you. A customer will eat over there and not to your place. And you don't want that. So that's why growth is really fundamental to success. There cannot be any success without growth.
Okay. Is there a specific time period that that you're allowed to grow before you become stale or stall out?
Yeah, it's a great question. So every market has its natural growth rate. Okay, so if you look at the electric vehicle market, for example, it's growing at a certain pace. The entire market has its growth rate. Within that market, if you're electric vehicles, you want to measure your growth rate compared to that market growth rate. So the pace at which you decide to grow or can grow has to be controlled. So I talk about this in the book. I said growth is like drinking. It has to be done responsibly. In other words, you can't just grow for the sake of growth, which is a very Silicon Valley mentality, by the way. I'm going to raise millions of dollars from VCs and private equity firms so that I can grow, and I don't really profit. I don't have a line of sight to profitability. That's an afterthought. And I think that could be dangerous in some cases. So the market has its own growth rate, and then you as a business, you have your own growth rate. For example, if you say, the only way I can grow is by hiring more salespeople, well, it's not that easy to hire a lot of salespeople in a short period of time. So you have a constraint that's dictated by your inability to hire fast enough. So I think your question is great, and you have to be very thoughtful of how am I going to pace my growth within the constraints of my business. It could be a financial constraint, it could be a geographic constraint, it could be an inability to hire fast. There's always a lot of constraints. So you have to understand what constrains your growth and then try to address that first and say, okay, I need to solve that problem first, and then I can unleash the growth rate.
Got it. I've heard a lot of stories where companies grew too fast.
Oh, yeah.
That was the reason for their downfall.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Yep. So once you get these aligned, and I'm pretty sure, it takes time and, marketing research, things of that nature. But once you, know your target market and you kind of getting things aligned, what are the traditional methods needed to grow a business?
Yeah, so in order to align your business with your target market along the 4 axes, you have to understand where are you aligned. And to do that, I'm a very data guy. I'm a scientist by background, I'm a physicist by background, and I do want to measure things. And so and this is part of what I describe in the book, we at Blue Dots, the firm I'm managing, we developed a methodology to measure the coefficient of alignment from 0% to 100% along each of those 4 axes. And there are tools and methods to do that I describe in the book. But the advantage of that, if you know your coefficient of alignment along the first axis, for example, the pain and the claim is 53%, you have a long way to get to 100%, which is the target. Obviously, nobody is at 100%, but you need. And so the measurement is really the key to understanding. And then after that, you develop a set of actions. And that playbook, that growth playbook, is really the answer to the Monday morning at 8 o'clock question, because you know exactly what you need to do, because you understand where you're misaligned, and you know how you're going to get better aligned and rectify those misalignments. And that's really the whole way of approaching the how do I do it now that I understand that I need to be aligned.
Okay. What is counterintuitive about your new paradigm?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I think I lost you for a second.
What would you say is counterintuitive about your new paradigm?
Well, I think that this idea that you can measure, I think is surprising people. It's like, okay, I know I'm not quite aligned, but it's like, I don't know what to do about it. And I didn't know that you can actually measure scientifically the coefficient of alignment. And so I think it's adding a data layer and understanding on the top of the problem that makes it very innovative. And in fact, as you said, I've been on 21 boards, and I always observe the same movie at the board meetings, which is the CEO comes and he says, well, I'm not gonna hit my numbers this quarter, my sales number, my revenue number. And he brings his VP of sales, the guy running sales, and the guy running sales says, well, I didn't do my quota, my numbers, because the leads are good quality. And so then the VP of marketing comes and he says, well, the leads are not good quality because the product doesn't have exactly the attributes or the functionality that we need, and our competition is beating us. And then the poor product guy comes and he says, well, I couldn't build that feature because you didn't give me the budget I asked for. I didn't have the time. You gave me a timeline that was crazy. So there is a circular finger pointing attitude that says, the CEO goes to the VP of sales, goes to marketing, goes to product, and goes to finance. And then the board gives direction, or the CEO makes a decision to grow faster, to do something. And I always ask, I said, well, show me the data. Why did you make that decision? Why do you think that's the problem? And show me the data, what I call the market truth. I want to know what the market is truly thinking. It's not what you It's not your hypothesis. It's not what you think it might happen. It's not a guess. I want to look at a number. And the traditional methods, again, of hiring more salespeople, which is the typical knee-jerk reactions, like we need to hire more salespeople, we need to VP of sales. That, in my experience, very rarely works. And the reason is because it's emotional, and sales may not be the fundamental reason you're not growing. You may be an A2 misalignment where your messaging is off, and you can have the best sales force in the world, they're still not going to sell as much because the messaging is off. And so the counterintuitiveness comes from the fact that you can rationally look at it, take the emotion out of the discussion, measure, and then put an action plan based on the data. And that's very, very that I don't know nobody else has done before, as far as I know.
Wow. Okay, so this is very interesting. Based on being a data guy, you can still operate the messaging. You can, I guess,
You can measure.
You can measure and then be able to change your messaging and I'm looking at it from a social media perspective, right? So like Facebook, if you can take all of the data and all of the analytics and run A/B testing and kind of come up with different, strategies or, different creatives and things of that nature. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, but it's a bit different. It's a bit more sophisticated. The problem with Facebook is that if somebody expresses his or her voice on Facebook, you don't even know if that person is truly a customer or not, right? You don't know the level of interaction between that person and your product really is. And so you may make decisions thinking that they're all customers, but they may not all be customers. They may all have a hidden agenda and the reason that they're going to criticize. They may actually belong to your competitors and criticize your product. Well, that's dangerous because you're going to make a decision based on that, and that person is not a customer. In fact, it's their vested interest to critique your product. So the way we do it is we actually call customers and lost customers and prospect and lost prospects. Those are the 4 categories. And I call you as a customer and I said, I know you're using my product, Rashad. How would you describe what my product does in one sentence? Just one sentence. If you meet a friend and you describe what my product does, which is the product you bought, again, how would you describe that? So if you ask that to 40 or 50 people and you analyze those sentences, you can actually see how much they converge into the sentence that's on the website that describes the product, right? So, and you can measure how far that description, the average description of those 50 customers and your description on your website, which is your message. So you can compare the perception and your message, and you can measure the alignment. I'm simplifying a little bit. It's a bit more complicated than that, but that's how we measure, for example, the alignment between the message and the perception.
Okay. Okay.
You have to talk to those customers. You have to get the market truth. And by the way, we Blue Dots are talking to the customers, not the company, because the company, first of all, the company doesn't really want to hear if it's bad news. And secondly, the customer never likes to talk to the company because it's like, well, I don't really like your product, but I don't really like telling you I don't like my product. Whereas if they talk to me as Blue Dots, I said, look, I work for Blue Dot. I don't company. I don't care about the company. I don't really care if you tell me you hate the product or hate the CEO's haircut. It's fine with me. And I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to ask you, can you describe in one sentence what the company does? And so it gives us the integrity and the objectivity that is critical to be able to get to the market truth that the executive team or the CEO cannot get by calling directly the customer. It just doesn't work.
Okay.
It's very subtle. You have to do it in the right way. Otherwise, you're not measuring correctly.
Right. Right. And the people that you're, so you said they're basically old customers or someone who's purchased before or people that you know is a direct customer.
Right. You have to know that they are a customer indeed. Or they are a lost customer, somebody who just decided to stop using your product 6 months ago And that's a very interesting thing as well, because you can ask them and say, yeah, I know you stopped using the product of that company. You have good reasons. I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. I'm sure you made the right decision for you. Tell me, why did you stop using that product? And we've done this, many times for our clients, and we'll always, when we bring that back to our client, they are very surprised and, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they stopped using it for that reason. And there's always lots of key insights and eye-opening to the market truth that we're bringing back to those companies that we're helping to grow.
Yeah, I can see how they would tell your company the truth as opposed to the actual company that let them down. So yeah. So you're saying that this can be done in any industry?
That's correct. Restaurant. Yes. Okay. As long as there are a transaction, meaning somebody is buying something, and as long as you have enough transactions, right? So if you have a business and you have 8 customers, this method, you should know that those 8 customers called. You don't need to do this analysis. So there has to be, at least 50 to 100 customers, but it applies to pretty much any business. If your business has less than 100 customers, it probably doesn't need that, and there are not that many businesses that have only, a handful of customers.
Okay. So from the business perspective, they would need a way to keep up with customers, lead generation, or email campaigns, just to keep up with these.
Well, they should know. They should be able to talk to their customers, right? If you have customers and you don't know who they are, then the first thing you need to do is you need to acquire that data and that information. You need to know who your customers are, because otherwise you cannot do anything. You just know that somebody a product, you have no database, you have no view on who they are. Is this a woman, is this a man, what age? There's many questions that you need to understand. You need to segment your market and understand those segments for sure.
Okay. So what was it in your background that was critical to invent this new paradigm?
Well, I think it's my physics background. So I've done research in physics, in chaos theory, which I use every day with all those entrepreneurs. It's really interesting. I think that physics helps you understand the world based on what the world truly is. And what I mean by that is that there are 4 fundamental forces in the world that govern the behavior of the entire universe. And that's it, there's no more than 4. And when you understand physics and you put together those models, those theories, then you test those theories against an experiment, and the experiments will either validate the theory. It's very black and white. And I think there is no reason to not think that businesses are like that. So the understanding of why customers truly buy, there's a reason they bought, always. You may be emotional, you may not be emotional, but there is a reason. And the understanding of the forces behind those, is really important. And the way I'm thinking about it is those 4 universal axes of alignment are the equivalent of the 4 fundamental universal forces of the universe. And that's the way the business is driven. And there's no other forces. Although that's not completely true. There is a 5th alignment, and I actually dedicate the last chapter of the book on it, because this is actually really important as well. And the 5th alignment is the internal alignment. If the organization is not internally aligned, then they will not be able to execute the external alignments. So you start with understanding and having a growth playbook, and then you have to have a team who is behind the execution of that growth playbook, and they have to be internally aligned. And if you're internally aligned, you will not go as fast because there is no execution of the growth playbook. So I'm thinking always as 4 + 1, the 4 external alignment with the market equivalent to the 4 forces of the universe. And then there is one more alignment, which is the internal alignment that has to be there for the execution of the growth playbook.
So the forces of the universe.
Just to answer your question quickly, physics and the way I look at the world through my physicist eyes really gave me this new idea of looking at it from that business. And I think that's why I was able to come up with those ideas.
When you were in school and studying for physics and everything, did you ever think that it was translate to business?
No, in fact, I no, I mean, I had no idea that I would apply any physics in a business. But it just gives me a way to look at the world that most people don't have, because they don't necessarily have interest or the background in physics. And I knew that when I was studying physics, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life doing research, because it's a very lonely job. You're working very deep on a field in physics. There's many fields. And there is only a handful of teams in the world that understand and that are working on the same problem. And I'm a people's guy. I like people. And it's like, if I keep doing this the rest of my life, I'm going to interact with a few teams, in the US and maybe Japan and wherever they are, interact with people. And so very early, I decided that I will not be a research physicist for the rest of my life, that I wanted to go into business. And the other thing that's really interesting about business which is completely opposite to physics, is that physics is extremely rational. It's very binary. When you have a law in physics, the world follows that law. And if it doesn't, then you need to find another law that will replace the first one. That's how we went from traditional mechanics to quantum physics. And, but the business is actually, the vast majority of the case, people are making decisions based on emotions, not really rationals. They buy a product for emotions. So once you rationalize that argument that they make irrational decisions, and once you understand that, then you can start to go to the next level, which is this whole alignment thing. So, but people is really the key. That is the thing that makes me tick, and trying to help entrepreneurs, because I've been an entrepreneur. I know how hard it is. It's really difficult. It's a lonely job. You can't talk to your wife. You can't talk to your board. You can't talk to your executive team because they would freak out. You have to carry on and you have to figure it out. And it's really, really hard, and it's very tedious. And, Silicon Valley has the tendency to emphasize the glamorous aspect of entrepreneurship and those great entrepreneurs that build billions of dollars. Well, I tell you, those are exceptional people. There's not that many companies that reach $1 billion in market cap. And the reality is that it's very grinding, it's very difficult, it's very lonely. And I have full empathy with any entrepreneurs, whether you're selling an ice cream on the corner of the street or building the next Tesla. I know how hard it is, and I want to help. I really want, because I've been through it and I know how hard it is. I want to help. And that's also why I wrote the book.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. There's a lot of people out here that need actual step-by-step guide.
Yeah.
And at this moment in time, things are changing really fast as far as, technology is concerned.
Yeah, and innovation, right?
Right. Will you be writing a book, because I would definitely read it, about the way that physics is basically evolved into business, or how they relate? Have you ever thought about writing a book about that?
So when I wrote the book, Aligning the Dots, I sent a manuscript to my editor, and she called me back and she said, Philip, you send me a manuscript that's 80,000 words. A book is typically between 30 and 35,000 words. So she said to me, send me 2 books. And are you writing 2 books? I said, no, I'm just writing 1 book. And then she said, okay, you need to cut half of the book. And I told her, I said, look, I am not going to cut my own finger. You have to cut it. I mean, you're the editor. That's what you do. That's your job. I think everything I wrote is important. Otherwise, I would not have written it. And so then she said, your book is very confusing, because there is a lot of physics and math in your book, and there's a lot of business stuff in your book. And she looked at me and she said, what kind of book do you want to write? Do you want to write an academic book, or do you want to write a business book? And I said, with no hesitation, I want to write a business book to help entrepreneurs. But the reason I'm putting all this physics in there and not this math is because I want them to understand this measurement methodology and how to look at the data. And she said, you're going to lose everybody within 5 minutes. She said, you cannot put all those things. There's quantum physics, there's all kinds of things, analogies and thermodynamics. She said, so she said, okay, if you want to write a book, I'm going to take out all the physics and the math stuff. I'm going to keep very little of it. And then if you want to write another book about how physics apply to business, then that could be your next book. And it's exactly the idea that you're suggesting. So I don't know. I'm interested in the idea of writing that book. I just don't have the time right now. I mean, it takes a lot of time to write a book.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's a really interesting concept, because there's a lot of analogy of physics that can be applied to business and to life in general, I would try to say.
I definitely agree. That's basically the name of my brand, and what I teach people is kind of, if you can get aligned, align with yourself through, just meditation and motivation, and
Absolutely.
you can, it's, to me, it's all universal,
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about what I teach, or what I
Yeah,
try to show people.
Yeah, and I think, being aligned internally with yourself and with the world and being in harmony is really critical. And that's what physics is all about, by the way. All the stars are perfectly aligned according to the laws, according to universal laws. But there is a very clear and fascinating order and alignment that makes this universe be what it is today. And it evolves, it's changing a lot. And the same way markets and innovation are changing, and the way people think about dealing and living is also changed. And so I think you're absolutely right. I mean, to me, alignment, I mean, I use this word 1,000 times a day. I mean, that's all. That it's all about alignment, and you can look at any facets of life and universe and things around us, and you will find alignment everywhere. I mean, you will find alignment everywhere.
Yeah, if you open your eyes and just kind of look.
A surgeon that's operating a brain is all about alignment. If he's misaligned, it's a big deal. Docking into the International Space Station is all about alignment. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Finding gravity waves, it was done, I think in 2017, I talk about this a bit in my book, with those devices. They built 2 of those devices. They measure those alignments at a precision that's unbelievable. And even Einstein said, we will never be able to measure them, and we did. And so, you look at the Blue Angels flying together 18 inches apart, it's all about alignment. I mean, everything you can really, if you put that alignment lens on top of your eyes, you'll see that the whole world is all about alignment. Everything is about alignment.
Wow, I never looked at it like that. That's a way that's something to open your eyes and begin to see.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So careers and I guess entanglements, relationships, and all of that. You always hear the word alignment when someone is talking about those things. Yeah. So moving on in life, that's the key.
That's right. And if you're gonna marry somebody, you plan for a long time. And by the way, that person will change, you will change. So the alignment is a constant struggle. I mean, it changes all the time. When I align my business with my market, well, guess what? 2 years from now, the market has changed, because, as you said earlier, there is new innovation, new technology, new business models, new markets that never thought would be existing. And now you have to realign, because if you're not realigning dynamically, so it's a never-ending quest. The alignment is not one thing you do and then you're done. That's not the way it works. You have to realign constantly.
Oh, wow.
It's a battle.
So with that, being not aligned, can you give an example of a bad and a good alignment?
Yeah, I mean, the prime example of a bad alignment, and I'm assuming you're asking in business, is Theranos. Theranos was put together by Elizabeth Holmes. She dropped out of Stanford. She was 19. And the idea was you could run dozens of blood tests of one single drop of blood. It's a very appealing idea. No need to needle in your arm anymore. And she raised a lot of money. The problem is that the tests were inaccurate and didn't work. And so what happens is that the A4, if you look at the expected delight and the delivery, were completely misaligned, right? I'm giving a blood of my, sorry, I'm giving a blood of my drug, and the tests are just not correct, are not accurate. The company was a disaster, and she went through, and John Carreyrou, a journalist at the Wall Street Journal, wrote a fantastic book. It's called Bad Blood, about this particular story of Theranos. And she went through a trial and she was convicted just like 4 or 5 weeks ago, not too long ago. and the company completely shut down. So that's a massive misalignment where what she promised didn't really happen. You know, a good alignment would be Apple, because when you interact with the product, the level of delight you have interacting with that product is very high. There is a very good alignment between what you expect and what's delivered. So Apple is probably one of the best aligned companies that I know of. And that's the reason they are so successful today, and they are worth, you know, over $2 trillion in the marketplace, you know. So tremendous alignment there, and in all kinds of details. I mean, not just the experience of the product, but in many aspects of what they do, they are truly well aligned.
Yeah, you can tell. You can definitely tell that that's a company that communicates with their customers and stay aligned with what it is that they want. Well, Dr. Philip Bouissou, I would like to thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on the show, Rashad. I really enjoyed our discussion and your thoughtful questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you for checking out the show today. We look to enlighten you. If you would like to support the show, we don't believe in accepting handouts, so we have made available merchandise that we will provide you for your support of the show. That's right. Just head over to millionaireByMorning.store and pick up a shirt to lounge in, to work out in, or a mug to sip your morning coffee from. Okay. Either way, we thank you. Thank you very much. And don't forget to get out and make millions. Oh, you gotta make millions.